The Rizians made a fatal error when they sneered at Earth as an insignificant speck of dirt, nothing more than a backwater planet they could conquer on a whim. Benjamin Robinson slammed his fist on the conference table, knuckles cracking, as Primus, leader of the Rizian delegation, droned on, boasting of Rizia's vast star empire and the hundreds of species they had subjugated under their military boot. The intergalactic summit was meant to be a meeting of equals, but it had quickly devolved into the Rizians belittling humanity and taunting Earth as their next target. Benjamin gritted his teeth as Primus smirked, the alien's thick, scaly lips curling into a contemptuous sneer as he dismissed humanity's primitive technology. But as the summit continued, Benjamin began to see past the Rizians' arrogant posturing. He started piecing together the puzzle of their society, a militant oligarchy hell-bent on conquest and domination. In private side meetings, Primus bragged about Rizia's military might, how they plundered and exploited lesser worlds. The threat to Earth became all too clear. Rizia would not stop expanding until they enslaved the galaxy. As the human delegation returned home, Benjamin made a vow. He would not let the Rizians trample over Earth like they had so many others. If it took his last breath, he would figure out how to knock Rizia down a peg and show them what humans were truly made of. While the diplomats had talked, Benjamin had watched and listened, discreetly gathering intel on Rizian weapons, ships, tactics, anything that could give humanity an edge. In closed-door meetings with Earth's Defense Council, Benjamin laid out the facts in blunt terms. The Rizians were technologically superior, and if they chose to invade, Earth would fall. The counselors shifted uneasily, reluctant to pick a fight with a galactic superpower. But as Benjamin detailed his plan to systematically undermine Rizia's war machine through asymmetric warfare, to hit them where they were vulnerable, a few thoughtful nods emerged. Doing nothing was not an option. If Earth did not act first, they were only inviting invasion and brutal occupation. The vote was cast. The Defense Council greenlit Benjamin's audacious Black Ops plan. Earth would strike first by hitting Rizia where it hurt. In the months that followed, Benjamin and his covert teams worked in the shadows to erode the foundations of Rizia's empire. They infiltrated military outposts to steal weapon prototypes and ship schematics for Terran scientists to reverse engineer. Surgical strikes took out top Rizian commanders, sowing chaos and confusion in their ranks. Encrypted transmissions were beamed to Rizian subjugated worlds, stoking the flames of rebellion. And it was working. The Rizians were starting to falter for the first time in centuries. Outposts went dark, unexplained malfunctions plagued their fleets, and uprisings flared on a dozen surf worlds. But Benjamin knew they needed a true knockout punch to break Rizia for good. As reports filtered in of escalating Rizian aggression, fleets mobilizing to stamp out the spreading unrest, Benjamin played his trump card. A computer virus that would infiltrate the neural implant network all Rizians used to coordinate military ops. If they could infect the central hub, it would send Rizia's forces into disarray. But to do that, they'd have to gain access to the most secure and impregnable Rizian installation in the galaxy, their system Nexus, a supposedly invulnerable fortress of a space station. It was a suicide mission, one ship against an armada, a handful of human commandos against legions of elite Rizian soldiers. The Defense Council was split, but Benjamin didn't falter. Earth needed this victory. He would lead the final strike himself. So with a skeleton crew of Earth's best, Benjamin launched the most audacious gambit of the war. They captured a Rizian military transport and bluffed their way onto the super-fortified station. Now they were in the hornet's nest, racing to breach the central cyber hub and upload the virus before the swarming Rizian forces could cut them down in a hail of plasma fire. The fate of Earth and the galaxy hung in the balance. Benjamin and his Black Ops team stormed the central corridor of the Rizian battle nexus, plasma rifles blazing. A squad of elite Rizian guardians, clad in crimson battle armor, unleash a hail of return fire. Crackling energy bolts fill the air as the two forces clash in brutal close-quarters combat. "Push forward! We're almost at the cyber hub!" Benjamin shouts over the din of battle. He leads the charge, dodging and weaving through the deadly barrage. With a well-placed shot, he takes down a Rizian guardian blocking their path. His men follow close behind, covering each other with overlapping fields of fire. They reach the massive blast doors of the cyber hub. Benjamin whips out a hacking device and starts furiously working to bypass the security lockouts. "Captain, hostiles inbound! Lots of them!" one of his men warns. Benjamin glances back to see waves of Rizian reinforcements pouring into the Nexus, a sea of red armor and glowing weapons. "Hold them off, no matter the consequences," Benjamin orders. "This is what we came here to do." His team takes up defensive positions, fortifying their perimeter with overturned crates and debris. They dig in for a desperate last stand as the Rizian horde bears down on them. Benjamin types furiously, sweat dripping down his face, as his men fight like demons. Plasma bolts fill the air, turning the Nexus into a light show of destruction. One by one, his brave soldiers fall under the relentless Rizian assault. Just as the Rizians are about to overrun their position, Benjamin's hacking device beeps in triumph. The blast doors to the cyber hub hiss open. Benjamin sprints inside, locking the doors behind him. The heart of the Rizian war machine looms before him, a labyrinth of pulsing conduits and data cores. Benjamin pulls out the virus capsule and slots it into the primary data port. His fingers fly across the console, initiating the upload sequence. Come on, he mutters through gritted teeth. Outside, the last of his men make their final stand, buying precious seconds with their lives. The Rizians break through the blast doors just as the virus upload completes. Benjamin whirls, rifle raised, as the Rizians storm into the chamber. But before they can gun him down, the Rizians convulse and drop to the floor, writhing in agony. The virus races through the neural implant network, overloading their minds with excruciating feedback. Across the Nexus, Rizian soldiers collapse like puppets with their strings cut. The effect spreads like wildfire across Rizian space. On the bridge of a mighty Rizian battleship, the crew twitches and seizes at their posts. The ship lists out of formation and fires wildly, accidentally strafing its own fleet. On a dozen occupied worlds, Rizian formations suddenly break apart in confusion. Soldiers stagger and fall as the neural virus fries their implants. The subjugated species see their oppressors laid low and seize the chance for revolution. They rise up with a roar of defiance, overwhelming their weakened Rizian overseers. In his command fortress on Rizia, Primus watches in horror as his galactic empire unravels in real time. Insurrection alarms blare as world after world falls into open rebellion. His subordinates babble incoherently, the virus turning their minds to mush. "How is this happening?" Primus seethes. "We had the Terrans on their knees." Meanwhile, Benjamin and his team blast their way out of the crippled Nexus on a captured Rizian shuttle. They punch through the disintegrating Rizian blockade and rendezvous with the Earth fleet jumping in system. The human ships press their attack, hammering the disoriented Rizian forces with punishing broadsides. They target weapons, engines, and command decks with pinpoint accuracy, exploiting the intel Benjamin had gathered. As the Rizian fleet reels, Benjamin sets course for Rizia itself. It's time to take the fight directly to the Serpent's Den. Primus rallies the dregs of his military to make a defiant last stand around his homeworld. In the climactic engagement, human and Rizian ships duel on an even footing for the first time. Primus's crews fight doggedly, but Benjamin runs circles around them with his insider knowledge of their tactics and capabilities. The Earth fleet hammers through the crumbling Rizian battle line and launches transports to secure a planehead head. As drop pods rain down on the Rizian capital, Benjamin vaults into the first lander. It's time to dig Primus out of his hole and end this war for good. Benjamin's boot soles crunched over the debris-strewn floor of the Rizian command center. Plasma scorch marks marred the walls, and the acrid stench of ozone hung heavy in the air. His assault team fanned out, weapons at the ready. A barrage of energy bolts suddenly erupted from behind a row of command consoles. Benjamin dove for cover as his team returned fire. The distinctive red armor of Primus's elite guards gleamed in the flickering emergency lights. "Push forward!" Benjamin shouted over the din. "We need to reach Primus." They advanced methodically, leapfrogging from cover to cover. Benjamin's plasma rifle whined as he squeezed off precise bursts, dropping 2 guards in quick succession. Finally, they breached the inner sanctum. There stood Primus, scales filled with rage. "You think you've won?" the Rizian leader snarled. "We will never bow to dirt-grubbing apes like you." Primus lunged for a glowing control panel. Benjamin's team opened fire, but not before Primus slammed his clawed hand down on a large red button. Alarms blared. A holographic countdown sprang to life, numbers ticking down from 5 minutes. Primus cackled madly. "Behold the price of your victory, a subspace pulse that will ignite every star in your pitiful sector. If we cannot rule the galaxy, we'll burn it to ash." Benjamin's blood ran cold. He turned to his tech specialist. "Can you shut it down?" "I'll try, but this tech is beyond anything I've seen." As the specialist frantically worked to abort the countdown, Primus and his remaining guards attacked with suicidal abandon. Benjamin found himself locked in vicious hand-to-hand combat with the Rizian leader. They traded bone-crunching blows, neither willing to give ground. Benjamin's ribs cracked under a powerful kick, but he pushed through the pain. With a desperate lunge, he managed to wrestle Primus's energy blade from his grasp. In one fluid motion, Benjamin plunged the crackling blade into Primus's chest. The Rizian's eyes went wide with shock. He staggered back, green blood oozing from the wound. 10 seconds, the tech specialist shouted. Benjamin whirled to see the countdown reach single digits. His heart hammered in his chest. 5, 4, 3. "Got it!" The specialist's fingers flew across the alien console. The countdown froze at 1 second remaining. Benjamin let out a shuddering breath. Around them, the sounds of battle began to die out. Word spread quickly of Primus's fall and the thwarted doomsday device. Rizian soldiers threw down their weapons in surrender. In the days that followed, Benjamin oversaw the transition of power. He watched stone-faced as Rizian commanders signed documents of unconditional surrender. Among them was Xylar, Primus's former second-in-command. The Rizian's face was a mask of subservience, but Benjamin caught a glint of something else in those reptilian eyes. As Earth forces moved to secure Rizian space and dismantle their war machine, Benjamin couldn't shake a feeling of unease. Something about Xylar's cooperative demeanor rang false. His suspicions deepened when reports came in of Rizian officials friendly to Earth turning up dead or missing. When questioned about hidden weapon caches, Xylar's answers were evasive, bordering on contemptuous. Benjamin knew he needed eyes and ears in the Rizian underground. That's when he approached Axol, a former Rizian commando who had grown disillusioned with his people's brutal tactics. "I need someone I can trust to infiltrate Xylar's inner circle," Benjamin explained. "Someone who can blend in, gather intel." Axol's forked tongue flicked thoughtfully. "And why should I betray my own kind?" "Because you know the path Ricia was on leads only to ruin. Help us build something better." After a tense silence, Axol nodded. "I'll do it. But know this, human, my loyalties are my own." For weeks, Axol fed Benjamin scraps of information. But the breakthrough came during a clandestine meeting in the shadowy underbelly of the Rizian capital. "Xylar is gathering ships and weapons," Axol hissed. "He plans to lure your fleet into an ambush. If he succeeds, Ricia will rise again." Benjamin's mind raced. Could he trust Axol's intel, or was this another layer of Rizian deception? With the fate of Earth's victory hanging in the balance, Benjamin summoned his most trusted officers. They gathered around a holographic tactical display, faces grim. "All right, people," Benjamin began. "Here's what we know." "We need to move," Benjamin said, his voice tight with urgency. "Axol's intel can't be ignored." The emergency council chamber erupted into chaos. Earth military brass and Rizian advisors shouted over each other, some dismissing Axol's warning as paranoid fantasy. "Enough!" Benjamin smacked his head on the table. "We can't afford to overlook this. The stakes are too high." After hours of heated debate, they reached a consensus: investigate Xylar's activities covertly. Benjamin assembled a small, covert ops team. They followed Axel's leads, planet-hopping across Risian space. On the third moon of a gas giant, they struck pay dirt. Holy shit, Benjamin breathed, peering through his macro binoculars. A massive hangar complex sprawled across the lunar surface. Salvaged Risian warships lined up in neat rows, their hulls still bearing scorch marks from recent battles. Crates of armaments dotted the landscape. But what chilled Benjamin's blood were the half-assembled doomsday devices, unmistakable copies of the weapon that nearly incinerated Earth's home sector. Zyler's not accepting defeat, Benjamin growled. He's gearing up for round 2. Back on Earth, Benjamin issued a full readiness alert. He redeployed the fleet, positioning them to counter Zyler's ambush. Then he requested a face-to-face with the Risian leader. Zylar's scaled face remained impassive as Benjamin laid out the evidence. "These are serious allegations, human," he said coolly. "Do you have proof beyond the ravings of a disgraced turncoat?" "Cut the crap, Zylar," Benjamin snapped. "I've seen your stockpile with my own eyes. Stand down now or face the consequences." Zylar's composure cracked. His lips peeled back in a snarl, revealing rows of needle-sharp teeth. "Consequences? You dare threaten me? The Risian race will never bow to hairless apes." He let out a harsh laugh. "Your fleet is already doomed. My agents are in place, ready to cripple your ships from within. Your pitiful human minds can't comprehend true Risian might." Benjamin's blood ran cold. He raced for his shuttle, barking orders into his comm. "All ships, this is Benjamin. Lock down all systems. We have Risian infiltrators aboard." But it was too late. As the Earth Armada entered the system, their flagship suddenly went dark, reactor offline, weapons dead. A swarm of Risian warships shimmered into view, their stealth fields dropping. Energy beams lanced out, hammering the helpless human vessels. "Witness true power," Zyler's voice boomed over the comms. "Your obsolete species will be exterminated." Earth fighters and frigates scrambled to return fire, but they were grossly outgunned. Benjamin's blockade runner barely escaped the ambush, dodging through a hail of plasma bolts. As explosions bloomed across space, Benjamin gritted his teeth. Retreat meant abandoning Earth to Zyler's bloodthirsty forces. But how could they possibly turn this around? His comm crackled. "Sir, this is Commander Chen on the Defiant. We repelled the saboteurs, but weapons are still offline. We need help to—" The transmission cut off abruptly. Benjamin's mind raced. If they could get the Defiant back online. "Helm, get us to the Defiant," he ordered. "We're going to finish what Commander Chen started." The blockade runner dove toward the crippled flagship. Benjamin checked his sidearm, readying himself for a desperate assault. "Time to remind Zylar why humans don't go down easy," he muttered. Benjamin's blockade runner streaked towards the Defiant, dodging plasma bolts and debris. He gripped the edge of his seat as the pilot executed a series of evasive maneuvers. "Approaching docking bay," the pilot announced, voice tight with concentration. The Defiant loomed before them, its hull scarred and dark. Benjamin spotted flashes of weapons fire through the viewports. "Axel, you're up," Benjamin said. The Risian ex-commando nodded, his scaled face unreadable. "Follow me closely. One wrong turn and we're dead." They docked and rushed into the ship. Axel led them through cramped maintenance shafts and forgotten access tunnels. The distant sounds of battle echoed through the metal corridors. After what felt like hours of crawling and climbing, they emerged into a dimly lit hallway. Benjamin checked his datapad. "Engineering's 2 decks down," he whispered. A burst of plasma fire erupted from around the corner. Benjamin ducked back as bolts sizzled past his head. "Risian saboteurs," Axel hissed. "They've fortified the approach." Benjamin signaled his Marines. They leapfrogged down the corridor, trading fire with the entrenched Risians, the air filled with the acrid smell of ozone and burning metal. Inch by bloody inch, they advanced. Benjamin's armor took a glancing hit, searing his arm. He gritted his teeth and kept moving. Finally, they breached engineering. Bodies littered the floor. both human and Rizian. Chief Engineer Mackenzie huddled behind an overturned console, her face streaked with grime and blood. "About time you showed up," she growled. Benjamin's team secured the perimeter while Mackenzie worked furiously at a terminal. "The malware's nasty," she muttered. "It'll take time to purge." Suddenly, Axol spun around, weapon raised. Benjamin's heart skipped a beat as the Rizian's gun barrel swung towards him. Time slowed. Benjamin's hand inched towards his sidearm. In a blur of motion, Axol fired. The plasma bolt streaked past Benjamin's ear, striking a Rizian infiltrator who had been creeping up behind them. More Rizians poured in. Axol stood shoulder to shoulder with the humans, gunning down his former comrades. "I've chosen my side," Axol snarled. With Axol guarding their flank, Mackenzie worked faster. Sweat beaded on her forehead as her fingers flew across the keys. "Got it," she shouted. The lights flickered, then blazed to full power. Consoles hummed to life around them. Benjamin rushed to the nearest station. "Weapons?" "Cyclonic pulse cannons online," Mackenzie confirmed. Benjamin keyed the ship-wide comm. "All hands, prepare for counterattack." He strode onto the battered bridge, taking in the tactical display. Rizian ships swarmed around them like angry hornets. Benjamin grabbed the command chair's armrests. "Open a channel to the Rizian fleet." Zyler's scaled face appeared on the display, sneering with contempt. Benjamin allowed himself a small, deadly smile. "This dirt planet has a surprise for you." He nodded to the weapons officer. "Fire!" The Defiant shuddered as its cannons unleashed hell. Lances of energy sliced through space, striking Rizian ships with unerring precision. On the tactical display, enemy vessels blinked out one by one. Those hit directly simply vanished. Others spun out of control, their quantum matrices unraveling. Zylar's sneer turned to shock, then fury. "No! Launch the doomsday devices. Burn their world to ash." Benjamin watched in horror as massive projectiles rocketed towards Earth. But before he could react, Mackenzie's voice rang out. "Sir, the disruption package is active." The doomsday devices flickered, then went dark. Inert husks tumbled harmlessly into space. Zyler howled with rage. His remaining ships began to break formation, scattering in all directions. Benjamin allowed himself a fierce grin. "All Earth ships, this is Benjamin. Push the attack. Don't let them regroup." The tide had turned. Human vessels surged forward, emboldened by the Defiant's return. They pounded the retreating Rizians with a relentless barrage. Benjamin zeroed in on Zylar's flagship. "Concentrate fire on their command ship. Let's end this." The Defiant's cannon sang again. Zylar's ship listed, venting atmosphere and debris. "We've got boarders," a tactical officer shouted. Benjamin nodded grimly. "He won't escape us this time." But as Earth Marines stormed the Rizian flagship, proximity alarms blared. A sleek shuttle rocketed away from the dying vessel. "Zyler!" Benjamin growled. He banged his hand on the armrest. "Track that shuttle. Don't let him." The stealth fighter streaked away from the Defiant's onslaught, its sleek hull absorbing enemy fire. Inside, Zylar's clawed fingers danced across the control panel. He punched in a complex sequence, activating an encrypted channel. "Initiate Protocol Omega," he hissed. "Unleash the Purifier fleet." Benjamin's eyes widened as the tactical display lit up with new contacts. Massive vessels materialized at the system's edge, their energy signatures off the charts. "What the hell are those?" he breathed. The sensor officer's voice shook. "Sir, they're bigger than anything we've ever seen. Biomechanical in nature. Weapons unlike anything in our database." Before Benjamin could respond, space itself seemed to warp. Lances of exotic energy sliced through the void, striking Earth ships with terrifying precision. Hulls didn't explode. They unraveled, disintegrating at the subatomic level. "Evasive maneuvers!" Benjamin shouted, but it was too late. The Defiant shuddered as its shields overloaded. Alarms blared throughout the ship. Crew members scrambled to contain breaches and reroute power. Benjamin's mind raced. They were outgunned, outmaneuvered. He keyed the fleet-wide comm. All ships, fall back to defensive positions. Initiate Arjuna Protocol. Authorization, Benjamin Alpha 70. Across the Sol system, hardened missile silos burst open. Thousands of warheads streaked into space. Humanity's last, desperate volley. The missiles found their marks. Purifier vessels vanished in chain reactions of nuclear fire and antimatter annihilation. For a moment, hope flared in Benjamin's chest. Then Xylar's flagship deployed its secret weapon. A vortex of twisted space-time bloomed before it, bending the trajectory of incoming missiles. Most careened off course, detonating harmlessly in the void. The surviving purifiers pressed their attack with renewed fury. Earth's fleet, already battered, began to crumble. From the chaos emerged a colossus that dwarfed even its massive brethren, the Prime Purifier, a living factory of destruction. Its weapon ports glowed with eldritch energy as it took aim at Earth itself. Benjamin's blood ran cold. He knew what he had to do. "All hands, abandon ship," he ordered. "I'm taking her in." The Defiant, engines straining, accelerated towards the Prime Purifier. Benjamin's hands gripped the controls as he lined up his desperate attack run. "Overload the cyclonic cannons," he commanded. "We're going to crack that bastard's shields or die trying." The Defiant's hull screamed in protest as Benjamin pushed it beyond its limits. The Prime Purifier loomed larger in the view screen, its hellfire beam building to apocalyptic levels. Benjamin closed his eyes, for Earth. The Defiant slammed into the energy beam. For a heartbeat, two titanic forces clashed. Then the Defiant's overtaxed systems detonated in a cataclysmic blast that shattered the Prime Purifier's defenses. The beam dispersed, its killing power neutered. But the cost was catastrophic. The Defiant, along with Benjamin and its valiant crew, was gone. The wounded Prime Purifier reeled back, its system cycling down for an emergency recharge. It was vulnerable, but for how long? Xylar, watching from his command ship, snarled in frustration. He opened a channel to his remaining forces. "Reactivate the doomsday weapons. If we can't have this system, no one will." Deep in a hidden Rizian base, engineers worked feverishly to bring the quantum-disrupting bombs online, devices that could tear reality itself asunder. In the shattered remains of an Earth frigate, Benjamin's emergency pod drifted. The battered human leader reached for his comms unit with trembling fingers. He had one last card to play. "Axol," he rasped, "I need your help, one final time." Benjamin's fingers trembled as he keyed the encrypted channel. "Axol, it's me. We need you for one last mission." The Rizian ex-commando's face appeared on the small view screen, his scaled features tight with tension. "What now, Benjamin? We're barely holding on as it is." Benjamin leaned in close, his voice low and urgent. "I need you to infiltrate Xylar's command ship. Use your knowledge of Rizian tech to hijack the doomsday detonation codes. It's our only shot at stopping this." Axel's eyes widened, then narrowed. "You're asking me to die, to turn against my own people one final time." "I know it's a lot to ask," Benjamin said, his voice cracking. "But think of all the innocent lives at stake. This is your chance to make things right." Silence stretched between them. Finally, Axel nodded, his expression grim. "Very well, I'll do it. For Earth." As Axel's stealth fighter slipped away, Benjamin turned to his remaining officers. "Prepare all ships for a full assault on the Prime Purifier. We need to buy Axel time." Alarms blared as Earth's battered fleet surged forward. Fighters swarmed around the colossal purifier, unleashing salvos of missiles and energy beams. The massive construct shrugged off their attacks, its weaponry powering up for a planet-killing blast. Inside Xylar's flagship, Axel crouched in a maintenance shaft, his heart pounding. He'd used every trick he knew to slip past the outer defenses. Now came the hard part. He burst into a corridor, plasma rifle blazing. Rizian guards fell before they could react. Axel sprinted towards the central core, alarms shrieking in his wake. "Traitor!" a voice roared. Axel spun to face a hulking Rizian warrior, cybernetic implants gleaming. "You disgrace our people!" Axol's own combat implants surged with power as he dodged the warrior's first strike. They clashed in a blur of superhuman speed, trading blows that would shatter normal bones. Blood dripping from a dozen wounds, Axol finally saw his opening. He feinted left, then drove his fist through a gap in the warrior's defenses. The Rizian crumpled, and Axol staggered towards the control room. His claws flew across the alien console, bypassing security measures and firewalls. A countdown appeared on the screen, the doomsday weapons priming for detonation. Axol's fingers danced faster, overriding protocols, rerouting command pathways. Warning klaxons blared as the bomb's containment fields began to destabilize. "No!" Xyler's voice boomed over the ship-wide comm. "What have you done?" Axol allowed himself a grim smile as he directed the cascading implosion towards the heart of the Rizian fleet. He keyed open a channel to Benjamin's escape pod. "It's done," he said simply. "Goodbye, my friend, and thank you." Benjamin watched in horror and awe as a churning vortex of distorted space-time bloomed amidst the Rizian armada. Ships vanished into the Singularity's maw, torn apart by impossible forces. The Prime Purifier itself buckled, its reality-warping shields crumpling before the cosmic maelstrom. Benjamin shielded his eyes as the construct imploded, taking Xylar and his dreams of conquest with it. When the blinding light faded, only scattered debris remained where the Rizian fleet had been. Benjamin's comm crackled to life with the voices of surviving human ships, ragged cheers cutting through the static. "All vessels, report in," Benjamin ordered, his voice hoarse. Earth had won, but the price had been unimaginable. The Singularity's aftermath left a graveyard of twisted metal and frozen bodies drifting through the void. Benjamin's escape pod floated among the debris, its distress beacon pulsing weakly. Hours later, a battered Alliance cruiser retrieved the pod. Benjamin stumbled onto the bridge, his uniform stained with blood and sweat. He surveyed the broken remnants of Earth's fleet limping back to their homeworld. "Status report," he croaked, his throat raw from shouting orders during the battle. Commander Chen, her face haggard, responded, "Heavy casualties, sir. We're still tallying the numbers, but—" She swallowed hard. "It's bad." Benjamin nodded grimly. "Set course for Earth. We need to begin triage and decontamination immediately." The journey back was somber. Benjamin worked tirelessly, coordinating medical teams and damage assessments. His hands shook as he signed off on countless casualty reports. Upon reaching Earth orbit, Benjamin oversaw the massive undertaking of treating the wounded and containing potential Rizian contaminants. He moved from ship to ship, offering words of encouragement to shell-shocked survivors. In a makeshift command center, Benjamin pored over reports from across the former Rizian Empire. Freed worlds celebrated their liberation, but chaos loomed. Without the iron fist of Rizian rule, power vacuums threatened to plunge entire systems into anarchy. Weeks later, Benjamin stood before a gathering of human and alien delegates. The conference room buzzed with tension and exhaustion. An Altarian representative, her iridescent scales dulled by stress, spoke first. "The liberated systems need leadership. We propose nominating you, Benjamin Robinson, as interim Terran governor." Benjamin blinked in surprise. "Me? I'm a military man, not a politician." A grizzled human admiral countered, "That's exactly why we need you, son. You understand both sides. You can bridge the gap between species." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room. Benjamin felt the weight of expectation settling on his shoulders. He took a deep breath. "I accept the nomination," he said, "but only as a transitional measure. Our goal must be to guide these worlds towards self-governance." The delegates nodded, relief visible on their faces. Benjamin outlined his vision for a new interspecies alliance, one that would maintain security while dismantling oppressive Rizian infrastructures. In the following months, Benjamin embarked on a grueling tour of former Rizian territories. He stood before crowds on dozens of worlds, his translator working overtime as he addressed species from across the galaxy. On the mining world of Tauros IV, Benjamin gazed out at a sea of faces, human colonists and native Taurosians alike. Their eyes were wary, but hopeful. "We have all suffered under Rizian rule," Benjamin began, his voice carrying across the dusty plaza. "But now we have a chance to build something better. Not as conquerors and conquered, but as equal partners in a new galactic community." The crowd's response was cautious at first, but grew more enthusiastic as Benjamin laid out his plans for economic revitalization and political representation. As he stepped down from the podium, a Tarosian elder approached him. "Your words are fine, human," the elder said, his voice like gravel. "But can you truly deliver on these promises?" Benjamin met the alien's gaze. "I can't guarantee perfection, but I swear to you we will work tirelessly to make this alliance a reality." The Tarosian nodded slowly, then extended a gnarled hand. Benjamin grasped it, feeling a glimmer of hope for the first time since the war's end. But even as Benjamin worked to unite the liberated systems, trouble brewed on the fringes of known space. Reports trickled in of Rizian holdouts launching hit-and-run attacks on Alliance outposts. In his temporary office on the diplomatic station Harmony, Benjamin received a priority transmission from the outer colonies. The holographic display flickered to life, showing a human settlement in flames. Bodies littered the streets as figures in Rizian battle armor stalked through the carnage. "They call themselves the Hand of Primus," Colonel Rhodes reported, her face grim. "Rizian fanatics who see Primus as some kind of messiah. They're using recovered bioweapons, even purifier tech." Benjamin's fists clenched. "How are they getting access to that level of weaponry?" Rhodes shook her head. "Unknown, sir. But their leader, someone calling themselves the Prophet, seems to have an insider's knowledge of Rizian military protocols." Benjamin's mind raced. Could there be high-ranking Rizian officers involved? Before he could voice his suspicions, an alert chimed. "Sir," his aide called out, "we're receiving a transmission. It's from a Rizian scientist named Kalravi. She's requesting asylum in exchange for information on the Hand of Primus." Benjamin's eyes narrowed. "Put her through." The scarred face of a female Rizian appeared on screen. "Governor Robinson," Kalravi said, her voice steady. "I have vital intelligence on the Hand's plans and leadership, but I need guarantees of protection." Benjamin studied her carefully. "And why should we trust you, Kalravi? Our records show you worked on the Purifier project." Kalravi's expression didn't waver. "Precisely why you need me. I know their weaknesses, their codes. I can help you stop them." Benjamin weighed his options. The Hand of Primus posed a grave threat, but could he trust this Rizian defector? He made his decision. "Very well, Kalravi. We'll grant you provisional asylum, but you'll work under close supervision." He turned to Rhodes. "Colonel, I want you personally overseeing Kalravi's work with our decryption teams. Keep a very close eye on her." Rhodes nodded sharply. "Understood, sir." As the transmission ended, Benjamin stared out at the stars. The war might be over, but the real work of building lasting peace was just beginning. Benjamin's eyes snapped open, his vision blurred and head pounding. The cold metal floor pressed against his cheek as he struggled to focus. Nearby, the rest of Alpha Squad lay motionless, their chests rising and falling with shallow breaths. "Ah, you're awake," Kalravi's voice cut through the haze. "Perfect timing." Benjamin tried to move, but his limbs felt leaden. He watched helplessly as Kalravi tapped commands into a console, her claws clicking against the screen. What have you done?" Benjamin croaked, his throat dry. Kalravi didn't look up from her work. "Ensuring the future of my people, of course. Your bodies will be the perfect vessels for our rebirth." A series of pods hissed open along the far wall. Benjamin's stomach lurched as he saw the half-formed Rizian constructs inside, cybernetic implants melded with organic tissue. "You won't get away with this," Benjamin growled, straining against his own unresponsive body. Kalravi laughed, a cold, mirthless sound. "I already have." Across the room, Rhodes fought against her own paralysis. Her fingers twitched, inching towards the pistol at her hip. Sweat beaded on her forehead as she pushed through the neural block. Kalravi approached Benjamin, a syringe filled with silvery liquid in her hand. "Don't worry," she cooed. "Soon, you'll understand the glory of our cause." As she bent down to inject Benjamin, a single shot rang out. Kalravi stumbled back, green blood oozing from her shoulder. Rhodes stood on shaky legs, her gun trained on the Rizian scientist. "Step away from him," Rhodes snarled. Kalravi's eyes narrowed. "You're too late. The process has already begun." Benjamin felt a burning sensation spreading through his veins. He cried out in pain as his body convulsed, fighting against the alien code rewriting his very DNA. Rhodes fired again, but Kalravi was ready. She dove behind a console, tapping furiously at the controls. Alarms blared as the station shuddered. "You've doomed us all," Kalravi shouted. "Without proper initialization, the Genesis device will tear this station apart." Rhodes rushed to Benjamin's side, hauling him to his feet. His skin felt hot to the touch, veins pulsing with an eerie light. "We need to get out of here," Rhodes grunted, supporting Benjamin's weight. They stumbled towards the exit, Rhodes pausing only to grab two of the unconscious Alpha Squad members. The station rocked violently, panels exploding in showers of sparks. Kalravi's laughter echoed through the chamber. "Run all you want, you can't escape what you've become." Benjamin's vision swam, his mind assaulted by alien impulses and fractured memories. He fought to hold on to his humanity as the Rizian code wormed its way deeper into his psyche. Rhodes dragged them into an escape pod, her fingers flying over the launch controls. As the pod detached from the disintegrating station, Benjamin caught a final glimpse of Kalravi. She stood before the pulsing Genesis device, arms spread wide in triumph, even as the chamber collapsed around her. The pod rocketed away from the station, Benjamin slipping in and out of consciousness. Rhodes watched in horror as cybernetic implants began to sprout from his skin. "Hold on," she whispered, pushing the engines to their limit. "Just hold on." Behind them, the Genesis station imploded in a blinding flash of light, leaving only scattered debris and unanswered questions in its wake. The escape pod's engines sputtered as Rhodes fought to keep it on course. Through the viewport, the Genesis station loomed, a monstrous construct of alien technology and human suffering. Rhodes gritted his teeth, his muscles screaming as he maneuvered the unwieldy craft towards a docking port. Alarms blared as security drones swarmed from hidden recesses. Rhodes cursed, thumping his hand on the console. He'd hoped for a stealthier approach, but subtlety was a luxury he couldn't afford. Not with Benjamin and the others trapped inside, their bodies warping into something inhuman. The pod shuddered as a drone's energy blast grazed its hull. Rhodes jerked the controls, narrowly avoiding a second shot. He punched in the docking sequence, praying the codes hadn't changed. With a hiss of equalizing pressure, the airlock opened. Rhodes tumbled out, his boots clanging on the metal deck. The station's corridors stretched before him, bathed in sickly green light. In the distance, he heard the whir of approaching drones. Rhodes sprinted down the hallway, ducking into a maintenance shaft as energy bolts scorched the walls behind him. He crawled through the cramped space, sweat stinging his eyes. The shaft opened into a dimly lit laboratory. Rows of stasis pods lined the walls, each containing a half-formed abomination. Rhodes fought down a wave of nausea as he saw familiar faces twisted by Rizian technology. He spotted Benjamin in a pod near the center, cybernetic implants already sprouting from his skin. "Come to save your friends, human?" Kalravi's voice echoed through hidden speakers. "How quaint." Rhodes ignored the taunt, focusing on the control panel before him. His fingers flew across the unfamiliar interface, searching for a way to halt the transformation process. "It's futile," Kalravi continued. "The future belongs to us, to Homo Rizian." A holographic display flickered to life, showing schematics of the station. Rhodes's eyes widened as he saw the true scope of Kalravi's plan. This wasn't just about creating a new Rizian race. It was genocide on a galactic scale. "You're insane," Rhodes muttered. frantically tapping out an emergency distress call on his wrist communicator. "I am a visionary," Kalravi replied, "and you are obsolete." The lab doors hissed open. Rhodes spun, raising his weapon, only to freeze in horror. Benjamin stood in the doorway, but it wasn't the man Rhodes knew. Cybernetic limbs twitched spasmodically. Rizian bioarmor fused with human flesh. "Ben," Rhodes whispered, "fight it. You're stronger than this." The thing that had been Benjamin lunged forward with inhuman speed. Rhodes dove aside, feeling the air displace as cybernetic claws raked the space where his head had been. Rhodes rolled to his feet, his mind racing. He couldn't hope to overpower this monstrosity. He needed a plan, needed to reach the Genesis device's failsafe. But first, he had to survive. The mutated Benjamin charged again. Rhodes ducked under a wild swing, using his smaller size to slip past. He sprinted for the door, heart pounding. Behind him, he heard the screech of tearing metal as Benjamin gave chase. Rhodes raced through the twisting corridors, the station's layout burned into his memory from the schematics he'd seen. Left, right, down a spiraling ramp. The Genesis device's core lay just ahead. He burst into the massive chamber, the quantum matrix pulsing with otherworldly energy. Rhodes spotted the failsafe controls on a raised platform. He was halfway up the stairs when a crushing grip seized his ankle. Benjamin's warped face leered up at him, cybernetic eye glowing balefully. Rhodes kicked frantically, but the hybrid's strength was overwhelming. He felt himself being dragged back down the stairs, closer to those deadly claws. A distant rumble shook the station. Rhodes's eyes widened as he saw energy torpedoes slam into the viewports, their impossible payload somehow piercing the purifier's shielding. The distraction was all Rhodes needed. He wrenched free of Benjamin's grasp, scrambling up the last few steps. His hand slammed down on the failsafe, initiating the self-destruct sequence. Kalravi's enraged scream echoed through the station as klaxons blared. Rhodes turned to face the approaching Benjamin, knowing there was no escape now. One way or another, this ended here. The hybrid lunged, and Rhodes met its charge head-on. They grappled at the edge of the platform, teetering over the swirling vortex of the quantum matrix below. Rhodes felt his strength failing as Benjamin's augmented muscles squeezed the life from him. With the last of his energy, Rhodes twisted, using Benjamin's momentum against him. They toppled over the railing together, plummeting towards the roiling heart of the Genesis device. A blinding flash engulfed them both as the quantum matrix overloaded. Rhodes felt a searing pain, then weightlessness. His consciousness faded as the station tore itself apart around him. He awoke to the sterile white of a medical bay. Axel's scarred face swam into view, concern etched in his alien features. "You're aboard my ship," Axel said. "We recovered you and Benjamin from the wreckage." Rhodes tried to speak, but only a weak croak emerged. Axel placed a three-fingered hand on his shoulder. "Rest, my friend," the Rizian rebel said. "Your fight is over." But Rhodes knew it wasn't. Not while Kalravi's twisted legacy lived on. With his last reserves of strength, he grasped Axel's arm. "Promise me," Rhodes rasped. "You'll finish this. Stop her work from spreading." Axel's eyes hardened. He nodded solemnly. "I swear it," he said, "on my life and all I hold dear. The nightmare ends here." Rhodes sank back, letting the darkness take him. He'd done all he could. Now it was up to Axel and the Alliance to finish what he'd started.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel. And for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.